Greetings, magical souls. I hope everybody's doing well out there. There have been some pretty intense energies the past couple of days, and I think we're in for some more after the alignment of the seventh planet in the line of six already this coming, it's Friday for me. I've come on today to share an experience that may be helpful to some of you out there. And there's a few reasons for this. One being that I've spent the last 8 weeks or so since the beginning of this year going through some really, really, really rough times. Coming out on the other side of that, I realized so many things about myself and had so many epiphanies. And so, in sharing what I'm going to share, because I almost had some of those epiphanies before I read my soul plan, which is what I want to talk about today, I know that the soul plan isn't just something that I've read and then kind of, my mind's gone along with it. It was more the other way around. The soul plan was just a confirmation, if you will, of what I had discovered, but then allowed me to almost expand even beyond that. And I feel like at the moment where the energies are so heightened, and as more light comes in and as things change, because I think things are shifting more rapidly than any of us actually appreciate, that perhaps this can help other people to unlock their spiritual gifts, their talents, see what their challenges might be. Because imagine how awesome it would be for all of our souls to be able to do everything that they wanted to do. So there's a few reasons why I feel like my experience with this is really, really significant. And I think when I explain it as I go along, that may become evident. And there is a lady that read my soul plan. The timing of her delivering my reading to me was also just a couple of days after coming out my last sort of dark night of the soul. As I've mentioned to many of you, this year's been a bit rough. I have felt like leaving my physical body several times, and I sit here giggling about it now. But boy, when I was in it, it was bloody awful. Um, but there's always so much expansion, and the reason why I feel it's relevant right now is because I don't believe in coincidence, and I think that we're all unlocking something in one another at the moment. And there is an unlocking going on as more and more cosmic energy comes in. There are things that we're starting to realize. A lot of us are expanding. Things are really starting to just take off. So, just in that, going back to there's no such thing as coincidence, I believe that you coming across a video like this, you've seen a billboard, numbers on the clock, having a random stranger say something to you. These are all the ways in which our soul and the universe and our teams and higher selves can communicate with us if we are present and aware enough to actually see the signs and listen to the messages being delivered. So just to give you a bit of a background, the soul plan is, I guess, like having your astrological chart done, but it just works on the vibration of your name. So it's not any dates or where you were born, etc., etc. It is the name that you've chosen to come in here with. And this has been fascinating for me because as I go more and more along in my journey and I realize we're having all these activations of our throat, a lot of us want to chant and do all these things. And really, when we come in here, the name that we are given is possibly the way our soul speaks itself into existence in physical form on this plane. And if we think about how words carry vibrations, we know that words can be spells. We know that we've got to be careful with the words we use. When you start becoming more conscious of these things, there's so much tying up to it. And because everything actually is energy, frequency, and vibration, this just makes so much sense to me. And not that I'm discounting the value of doing your astrological charts and all the other things that are out there. This just for me is quite different because this is very, it does have a little bit of numerology, but it's more vibration based and it's the name on your birth certificate. The reason why I find this fascinating is because I know several people who tell me that their names on their birth certificate were spelt incorrectly. And again, I don't believe that's coincidence. The other thing is that we live in a society where largely when getting married, the woman has given up her name to take on her husband's name. And maybe that's not what we should be doing. And maybe it is what we should be doing. So all these possibilities exist. And I guess it's up to us to really feel into what resonates. And I wanted to come on today because the way that my name, my birth name, what's happened to me in my life, my married name, and some of the things that I've gone through in the last couple of weeks, and some of the things that I've gone through in my lifetime are far too synchronistic for any of this to be coincidence. And I'm sharing it today because I feel like in having my soul plan read, it has just been like an unlocking of realizing my talents, my gifts, all my challenges in this life have suddenly started to make sense. And I don't necessarily have the path laid out in front of me, but what it's enabled me to do is feel more at home within me. And I understand so much more about myself. Everything, as I say, has clicked together like a giant puzzle. And it's allowed me now to be more comfortable with the path almost appearing beneath my feet as I take the steps. So I'd like to share the story with you today. And before I do that, I am going to leave Kelley's details below in the description box if anybody would like to reach out for a soul plan reading. Kelley also adds her own intuitive insights into the reading, which just give it another layer of depth. She was doing these and she took a little bit of a break to build a course that she's doing for teachers and to help the children of today to move into a more empowered space, because we all know that there are huge problems with a lot of our systems on this planet at the moment, one of them being the education system. And so she took a break to try and to work on that because that's one of her callings. But now she's back doing her soul plans, which is really exciting because I think she's got a bit of a knack with these things. So if this is something that calls to you, I'm not trying to promote it or sell it. I don't get anything from it. I just really want to share the experience in case it is helpful for anybody out there who maybe has been going through a bit of a rough time. Things are very upside down. This, if it calls to you, I feel like this could be one of those things where you stumble across this because you're meant to, because your soul's trying to guide you, to give you a little bit of a roadmap as to what's going on and what it really wanted to come here to do. Because, of course, in the physical form, in the physical avatar, having free will, we can choose not to do certain things that our soul came in here to do. But as I say, this has had a real, from all the charts and everything that I've had read over the years, I love this one because it doesn't just sort of point out personality traits, which are really important because we are in a physical body, and challenges and maybe elements of the stars in that, but it's more about the unique vibration of your name. And what I love about it is that there is a soul destiny in here, and there are also talents that you came into the world with. And this is why I want to share this at this time, because I feel like a lot of us are having our talents unlocked. And perhaps you might feel like I do, where you have been almost dormant. Something that you've done in your life has placed you in this area of dormancy, and now you are ready to be activated, or you are ready to share your gifts with the world. This ties in a little bit with the witch wound and things like that, because none of us felt safe to express our gifts. And if we've had lifetimes of being persecuted for using our gifts. So there's a lot of stuff that is coming in together and tying everything together. And maybe as I share my story, some of this will make sense to you. But I invite you to just listen with an open mind and an open heart, because I feel that my story is really unique. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to share it, because even when Kelley did my reading, she nor I know anybody in the same situation with a name like I have and the names that I've had in my life, which just adds so much more magic to this soul plan. I came into this world with one name, which was Emma Jane Linton. And that soul plan had a certain vibration to it. I would like to just mention here that in that soul plan, there is a piece in there that is very much in line with my connection to the elemental realm. So it's just added another little like tick to my understanding of why I've always been so connected to the fairies, the dragons, the unicorns, and my really, really, really strong belief in magic my whole life, and particularly when I was a child. I always, always, always have believed in magic, and I've always been connected to that magic. My mom and dad happened to get divorced when I was quite young, and so, of course, I lived with my mum, and she remarried when I was 7. My stepdad then decided that he would adopt me, and he became my dad. And I had that adopted name until I got married. What's really, really interesting is that while I had that adopted name, I really didn't feel myself, and I felt incredibly disconnected. I spent a large portion of those years being in deep, deep depressions, doing inner work, seeing psychologists, trying to understand myself, all sorts of things. I also had 2 pretty hectic relationships during that time. One was really abusive. But what's fascinating is that towards the end of being in that adopted name, and I'll call it a suit, being in that adopted suit, towards the end of that, I had my serious car accident, which was, I believe, a way out for me. Had I wanted to leave this realm and leave my physical body, I had an out then. The things that happened during that car accident were very much like an NDE, and that was the almost the start of me finding my way back to what I was before I put on the adopted suit. Now, this doesn't negate the adopted suit. As I mentioned earlier, I think that some of us may have chosen to do these things so that we could keep our gifts hidden, take a little bit of a different path. And in my case, I feel a lot of those years, because of the experiences that I had, allowed me to now do the work that I'm doing, where I'm helping others. And in particular, where I'm helping animals, or the animals might be the bridge to me helping the human. So a lot of those dark years that I walked through have even allowed me to become more empathetic, more understanding. So when I have people come to me or animals come to me, I have almost walked the dark path. So it's not like my life's just been rainbows and unicorns. It certainly started out like that, but then I had this little detour. And I think, again, that was very, very necessary for me, because I had so much growth. We all know that we don't grow in a comfort zone. And just linking back to the last, well, to the beginning of this part of the year that was so, so dark, it's amazing how much has now come from that has expanded me even more. So we know that the darkness activates our light, if you will. That's simply put, and it might be a bit of a cliche, but I'll leave it there. So when I had the car accident, I realized that I was asleep behind the wheel. I was attracting all these relationships that I didn't really want, and life was passing me by. And within a few months of having that car accident, I turned my life completely around. It was ending relationships, moving homes, getting new jobs. It was like everything. It wasn't just the ending of a relationship. It was massive upheaval because at the time, the person that I was with in the relationship, we owned a house together and I worked with him. So it wasn't just one aspect of my life that needed to be changed. It changed. It was absolutely everything all at once. And it was pretty hectic. But over the next 2 years, I started to realize and awaken to the fact that after my next relationship, that there were very similar things, just in different ways. And it was then that I started to really think, well, why is it that all the things that I'm now having in my life are not really what I want? I mean, this just doesn't seem to be possible. What is happening here? And then I went and did the inner work, and I realized that because I was asleep in my life, I was not, I was subconsciously attracting all the things I didn't want because that's kind of what I was probably thinking about all the time. And there were other things. But in a nutshell, it was really that I was unconscious to what, I was blind to what was going on within me, is really the essence of it. So I did the work, and at the end of that sort of 2 year period, I then had a real idea of what I did want. If I was going to have a partner, what I wanted them to look like, what traits I wanted them to have, what I wanted my life to look like, what I wanted to start doing with my life. Because while I was in that suit, which was until my early 30s, I could never settle in a job or anything. I was job hopping all the time. I mean, I really, really battled to settle. Then I did the work, and then I crafted a letter to the universe. And it took me about 3 months to craft it completely. I listed all the things that I wanted now to have in my life, including the traits in a partner. And if I couldn't have those traits, then I was quite happy to be the crazy witch cat lady that lives on the hill. And yeah, that would be it. And maybe I'm a bit of both. What happened after that is it was about 3 months later, after I'd crafted my letter and got it all down pat, I slept with it under my pillow and I read it every night just before I went to sleep. So it was the last thing in my mind as I was going to sleep every night. And 3 months later, my husband walked into my life. The most significant thing, never mind the fact that he has all the traits that I asked for, the most incredible thing about this is his surname. So this comes back to the soul plan and the name that we come in with. If you look at how similar my birth name of Linton is to my current name of Liston, you will note that there is only one letter difference. The N has become an S. And so when I asked Kelley to do my reading, I just made mention of this to her because obviously you only need your birth name. That is what your soul plan is done on. But I had always been intrigued. Ever since I married my husband, I was like, how on earth? I don't know anybody else with such a similar surname to their birth name after they've gotten married. And because I want to say manifested, it's the only word I can think of, but because I asked for or brought to me the person that I wanted in my husband, the fact that he then comes along with this name, that cannot be a coincidence. So that is why when I had my reading done, I said to her, I know this is just meant to be the birth name, But there is this thing with my surname that has always nagged at me. I've been married now for 19 years. And I said to her, I'd really like to understand, what this means, if anything. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but it feels like it means something. And Kelley herself was like, wow, I've never seen this kind of thing before. I know she's going to check this out for me. And the conclusion of this was that you have your challenges, your goals, and your talents, and then your soul destiny in the soul plan. When she compared my Linton to Liston, the only two things that changed were my spiritual goal and my soul's destiny. And the only way that I can describe it, it was like I was born with this name. I then took this bit of a detour for 26 years being in this suit, in the adopted name suit, which didn't feel right, but I know that it was right for me. It's what my soul wanted. And then it was like, because I had done all the work, I maybe opted to stay here and do the work and all that kind of thing, and I didn't just exit. It was like then when I consciously thought about what I really did want in my life and I had done the work, that then my husband came along with this name to almost put me back onto the path that I came in on with all the gifts and everything, with just a slight elevation in my spiritual goal. But the beautiful part of it is that in all of these aspects of the chart, there are attributes and there are challenges or drawbacks to them and things that you need to work on. But the most magical thing about this is that in the slight elevation of my spiritual goal, it's almost like I received a gift from my soul. So did all the work, we bump you back onto the same path because it's now okay for you to get going, and we'll give you a little bit of a leg up. So the attributes in these two new things are things that I can really lean on and lean into, and things that I'm now using really in my work. But also they have allowed me almost to, I guess, do a little bit more on my soul path in this lifetime, which is totally mind-blowing. The soul destiny part of it was also like a leveling up. And in the main soul destiny, in these two areas, were so many of the things that I had come to realize just before getting this, but after all the darkness of the last 8 weeks. So it's really been such an epiphany and such a realization for me to have almost uncovered those, and then for this to almost just back it up, cement it, and give me an even deeper understanding of what I've just been through and what I've been through my whole life. And I'd like you to consider what your name means. If you've ever changed your name, maybe now you'll understand why. Maybe you want to go and get your name read and see what it means. If you're married or if you have changed your name, perhaps you can start to really look at whether you feel different, because the vibration has changed. You have changed your vibration. So your soul, your soul's your soul's plan is still underlying all of that. But if you have chosen to take on a different name, as for me, it was a little bit of an upgrade, but my names are so similar. That's what makes this such a unique situation. And that's why I say, for me, this is proof. Not that I need the proof, because I think I'd always been struck by how similar my birth name was to my married name. There was always something there that was nagging at me, and that's why I say this will either call to you or it won't. You'll either feel a stirring of something, or you'll go, oh, this is hogwash, So I'm not, yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing to share where we are. And as I say, I share it because perhaps there is something that now needs to be unlocked and let out into the world, as it's now becoming safer for us to step into what we've really come here to do. So if it calls to you, I invite you to check out check Kelley out and reach out to her if you have any further questions on that, because this was absolutely mind-blowing for me. It works on your birth name, but if you have maybe had something like me, or you have deliberately changed your name in some way, shape, or form, or you've gone by a different name than what's on your birth certificate, I think it's called an overlay, where they can do a reading of, this different name, which is I mean, it can be an additional reading in and of itself. So yeah, as I mentioned, I just thought it was a really interesting story. It's very relevant for me, for what I've been going through the past few weeks. The fact that I got it back, the timing of it, and everything that's been revealed to me. I've also felt like I've been, these past couple of weeks, and I know of a few people that have been experiencing very up and down since January. For me, it keeps feeling like, I always talk about the suitcases that keep washing up on the shore. And if I can describe it, as I think that as we're heading into these times where we're now really being called to step up, it's time to share our gifts with the world. It's time to step into our full power. The time is now. So the last few weeks have been so pivotal for me, as dark as they were. And I didn't, while I was going through them, it was absolute hell. It was so interesting because I kept feeling like I was being blocked from just trying to press on and move on and just carry on with the business and just carry on, when I was almost being forced into this presence and the silence and this really looking into things. And the only way I can describe it is that as I was just trying to press on and go, yeah, well, I'll deal with these things along the way, because obviously it's a journey, not a destination. It was like my soul kept coming and standing in front of me and going, no, you don't get to go any further until you throw the suitcase away. No more of this. And I feel like that's why it was such an intensely challenging time. I mean, the dark nights were not months and years like they've been for me in the past, but they were a couple of days, but they were so intense that it was almost unbearable to remain here. And on the other side of that, I obviously have these insights in that, but I really feel like it was like almost like a no more of this. We are so far down the path. There is so much that the soul wants to accomplish. And what I realized afterwards is that when I was thinking about giving everything up and just going back and getting a 3D job, because it would be so much easier, and I just stopped doing the work on myself, and I'm just going to tick along like most of the planets and just put my head in the sand and be oblivious to everything that's actually going on. What I realized is that it would be such a dishonor to my soul. And who is my soul? It's myself. It would be such a dishonor to myself to not. I've come this far on my path. So when I was ready to give up all those weeks ago, and several times over, ready to give up and check out completely, to come this far and then to just not know, to not follow through with what I know in my bones I'm here to do, would have been a real shame. And so that's another reason why I share it, because it's time for all of you out there to shine. It's time for, we are the change bringers. A lot of us have felt like we never fitted in and like it wasn't safe in that, and the time is now. So I invite you to tune into yourself and see whether this is something that resonates, and if it is, reach out to Kelley. Otherwise, hopefully you've just enjoyed my little story today. But isn't this that's certainly an interesting journey? And maybe you know somebody that's had their soul plan done, that they've spoken about, and now all of a sudden you want to go and ask them about their soul plan. So I do believe that everybody does these things exactly when they're ready to, and when they're open to receiving the information that is held within, because I think it's the being open to receiving the information that's delivered that is the unlocking and the expansion, because we can try and do things, and if we are not ready to hear them, we don't hear them, and we don't receive them, and we don't take them on board. So perhaps you're somebody that's even got a soul plan in your cupboard that you had done years ago, that you read and it was like, oh, this is utter hogwash. Maybe go shake the dust off it and get it out and have another look at it. And the reason why I say that is because when I did some very intense work with the dragons last year, it was from a book, and I had the book for, oh, I don't know, 20 years, somewhere around there. And when I tried to read it 20 years ago, I put it down after the first 10 pages and thought, what the hell have I bought? They might as well be speaking in another language. And yet when I pulled it out 2 years ago, just before I started doing the work, and I read it from cover to cover in like a couple of days, I was like, why did I not understand this, when I read it all those years ago? Because I wasn't in the space to receive that information. And then a couple of months later, I started it, and it took me a year to work through the book. And interestingly enough, that journey was a journey through what the dragons call the 5 inner rings, which is a very much a shamanistic journey, going into the upper worlds and the lower worlds and the middle worlds, and into all the layers and levels of yourself, really, to ultimately land up in the last inner ring, which is yourself, your home, your heart. So that's why I say, if you've had one of these done and it didn't make sense, maybe go and try and look at it where you are now. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Wishing you all a magical rest of the week, and just look after yourselves over the next couple of days as we come into this 7 planetary alignment. Take it easy, and I'm sure that I will be back soon.